Johnson. Mr. Kovacs, with respect to your testimony and your presence here today, it's my recollection that the chairman of the Judiciary Committee in his opening statements characterized consent decrees as a deal under the cover of litigation. Do you recall that statement?
I think you should just have the record read it back, but I don't recall that.
Okay. Do you think that the consent decree phenomenon, as you understand it, is properly characterized as deals under the cover of litigation?
In our report, we did not make any accusations at all about anyone. We didn't call it collusion. We didn't call it. What we said was that you have a process which can start, which eliminates.
Okay, reclaiming my time. Notice and transparency. You've made reclaiming my time. With respect to the allegation that what the consent decree explosion represents is collusion between regulated federal agencies and plaintiffs who sue those agencies, is collusion a fair characterization of what's going on?
We have never characterized this as collusion. The first time I heard of the word collusion was when I read some testimony that was submitted by Mr. Walk. Prior to that time, we had not used the word, and it is not in the report. And so that should be made very clear. What we're talking about is a hole in the process, whereby the process—
Okay, reclaiming my time. With respect to your report, now, this legislation is designed to cover consent decrees in multiple areas. Is that correct?
Well, it covers agencies, yes.
Right. There's no limitation on the Environmental Protection Agency,
Right.
correct?
It covers federal agencies.
Okay. Now, does your report provide evidence of issues with consent decrees in any other area than in the area related to environmental regulations?
Well,
it's a yes or no question.
Yes.
It does provide evidence.
Yes.
Beyond the environmental area.
Well, the first case that moved out of the environmental area was a consumer case on the Food Safety Modernization Act, and rather than being pivoted on resting on a citizen suit in an environmental statute, it rested on Section 706 of the Administrative.
Okay, the 71 cases that you document where there were consent decrees, those 71 cases were in what area?
Fish and wildlife, forest, land management, air, water, Chesapeake Bay, food safety. So it's a broader group than just.
So essentially it was the environmental area plus one food safety case that you mentioned. Now let me ask you this. Do you think that in the absence of any evidence in other areas, is it prudent for this committee to move forward with legislation that would cover consent decrees, for instance, in the area of antitrust?
Congressman, we have a right to transparency as American citizens. We have a right to know when our government is not obeying the law. We have a right to—
Okay, reclaiming my time. You've got no evidence of consent decree problems in the antitrust area, correct?
We did not do the report. We did the report for the consent decrees that we found where there was no transparency, and every one we found was put in the report. And the two, there's reference that we somehow—
Reclaiming my time. No evidence.
We did not.
Reclaiming my time. No evidence of consent decree problems in the area of civil rights, even though this legislation would affect it, correct?
That was not the purpose of the study.
Okay.
The terms of the study were specifically put in the cover of the study and what it was that we covered.
No, reclaiming my time. No evidence of consent decree problems in the area of voting rights, even though voting rights consent decrees would be covered by this legislation, correct?
We did not look at voting rights, and they would be when you have private parties versus private parties, they wouldn't have been covered by the report under any circumstances.
Right, but it will be covered by this legislation, correct?
If large segments of the country that had standing to sue and were injured It would cover them, yes. What we are talking about is giving some notice to people who have constitutional standing and have been harmed. If they have been harmed, they should have notice. And they should, if they have been given notice, then they should have a right not to intervene, but at least to have the court hear why they have been injured. This is about transparency, and it's about the right to intervene if you are injured.
One last question.
And your time has expired, but I'm going to let you go on.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. One last question is, even though this legislation will cover the consent decrees in the area of disability or employment discrimination or voting rights, which I believe I mentioned, your study is narrowly focused on 71 particular instances, but is being presented today as evidence to support legislation that would cover a wide range of areas under federal jurisdiction with respect to agencies. Is that right?
There is so much secrecy in government in how it handles lawsuits, whether it be these cases or the judgment fund or anything else, that spending 18 months to try to find out when our government was sued and when they went into a settlement without public notice is a very difficult process. That is something the agency should be doing. That is something we have asked for, and there is no reason why a federal agency shouldn't inform the Congress that they have been sued X number of times and that they have paid attorney's fees and that they were in the wrong and that they agreed to do something. The American public have a right to know, and they have a right, all we're talking about is a right to know that they're being sued, a right to know that they're going to go into a consent decree and change the rights of the American people, and a right, if we are one of the injured parties, to intervene in that case. I don't think asking for those basic rights is something that should be so debated in this committee. This is a basic right to know what our government is doing, and this is all we're asking. I don't know why this is such a debate.
Thank you very much for that extended statement.
Thank you.